talk to us about that moment then, Dai. Was it 5 years ago? Was it? I think you've said. Was it?
It's almost 6 years now. Actually, it'll be 6 years in August. That big shift happened. But
can you pinpoint a moment where you were like, I'm doing this. Like it's now or never.
Well, I won't go into the full backstory, but 11 years ago, and this is sort of the seed of what I talk about in the TED Talk. So I won't go into super details, but ultimately, to sum it up, my wife sat me. I used to abuse alcohol and occasionally narcotics. Like I got into a lifestyle where that was how I dealt with stress and anxiety. I'd have some drinks, and it just became a very present routine in my life. It was the normal. It was just like full day at work, helping people. Well, I come home, I help myself, and I'll do that with some drinks, and it just became very, very easy. And it started to disrupt my quality of life, specifically how I interacted with family and how I could provide for my family. And things were going down the wrong path, if you know what I mean. Like it was pretty clear that if I kept doing what I was doing, I was going to end up alone and possibly dead. Like it was a pretty dark time. And my wife asked me a question as we were discussing the potential of us separating and ultimately divorcing. Her taking my kids, who at their age, 11 years ago, they were 4 and 6. So 2 girls, both under the age of 7. Here I am building a company and just, gosh, guys, it was just hard. You know what life's like when it's just like, oh my gosh, everything's coming at you. And it's just like, wow, it's overwhelming. My normal action would be, well, just uncork a bottle. It'll be okay. I'll deal with it tomorrow. Right. And that was just how I would deal with these moments. And she asked me a question. She said, Dai, are you being the type of man you'd want your daughters to marry? And what I realized was when she asked me that question, I was not being the dad. I was not being the husband. I was not being the father. That I would, trust me, if a guy like me at that time, 11 years ago, showed up on my doorstep saying, hey, we'd like to get to know the women of your life, I wouldn't allow them in, man. I'd punch him in the nose, kick him in the yoo-hoo, and be like, get out of here, but that's who I was role modeling. That's what I was saying. This is how a man should be. This is how a father should be. And that's like, I look at my actions at that time, right? And it was like, whoa, it was just this realization. But I made a commitment to go 1 year without drinking. I was just like, I made a commitment to them. I'm going to take 1 year, no drinking, and we'll see what happens. And what I realized that those alcohol had become a very big crutch in my life. I learned to function very well with alcohol, very well. Like, to the point that, you take the alcohol away, those crutches are removed. And I realized, whoa, I got a little bit of dysfunction here. I don't know how to deal with some of these challenges internally, especially the mental health aspects of what I was going through, how to deal with stress, how to deal with anxiety. And no matter how much I worked out, it didn't seem to do the same as what alcohol did, right? And because I always hear that people say, oh, just exercise. It's a great way. It's an alternative. And I'm like, yeah, I already exercise. I'm a pretty fit guy. Yet this is how I deal with the mental health challenges. And so during that year, I grew so much because I had to find new association because all my friends, my mates, right? Like, that was how we would interact. It's like, yeah, let's go watch UFC in the pub and go play the round of golf. We'll hang out afterwards, and it was always super social. And the people that I often hung out with the most, it was often infused with lots of alcohol. And all of a sudden I'm left like, well, who do I get around now? Like, what can I do? Like, I was quite lost.
Yeah.
And so I found some support. I found a psychiatrist. I worked with him for 3 months. I found a relationships counselor. I worked with her for like 4 or 5 months. I just started doing a lot of personal inner work, just work on me, trying to figure out, well, how do I get through this without going to my normal, going to alcohol or to drugs? Like, is there another way? Is there a healthier way to deal with these challenges that I'm working through? In that 1 year, guys, I grew so much just as a person. As a human, I grew a ton. I learned a lot. And I realized after that year, I was like, you know what? I don't need any alcohol. I'm okay. I like where this direction's going, where I'm headed right now. I'm not going to add it back in. And I've maintained that. I mean, I've gone 11 years. I'm very confident. I can have a drink today, no problem. I don't ever refer to myself as an alcoholic or as being addicted, but I did often value alcohol over the other things that truly mattered in my life.
Yeah.
It was a value. I just valued one thing over the other. And it's not until I started questioning, well, why do I value this? Why do I put alcohol up here on this pedestal when I put my family down here? What is going on here? You know?
It's just a convenient escape, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And in that year, I grew so much. And then I just continued to grow personally. So much so that within a couple of years, and this is started giving you the timeline that led up to that, 6 years ago. It was about a couple of years into that transformation of developing this new lifestyle, this new outlook on life, now starting to focus on personal development, not professional development, because all through my 20s, everything was all about how do I make more money? How do I be seen as the man? It was all ego that drove my decisions, which also led to, more than likely, that lifestyle led to why I abused alcohol. It's me. I'm owning it. It's no one else. It's me. That was my decision, my life. I did it. It's okay. But all of a sudden I started going through these changes. My wife and I started to connect on a lot of different levels. We started to talk about dreams and visions and things we'd like to do with our kids as they're getting older. My wife always had a passion for travel. Always. I was the one that actually ended her travel career. And what I mean by that is, we were in her early 20s and I locked her in so she could stop traveling, started having kids. Right. And she put that travel bug on the shelf but it was always there. And she always expressed that she'd love to travel as a family one day. And sorry, man, that's my cat. That's going real crazy. Hey. Anyways, he might stop me out in a sec, but here we go. So this is where I was at. And I started to realize as you start to grow and you take away some of these crutches, these things that distract us from sometimes looking at our life in detail. You know what I mean? Like it's, again, sort of like that mirror moment when I was 14 years old, looking at myself in the mirror being like, I hate you. I don't like you. This has got to change. Well, in a way, I went through that similar exercise, but more on a spiritual and a mental side of things, where I started taking inventory of my life and where I was and what I was doing. And I started to actually ask the big question rather than avoid the question. What do I want for my life? Yeah. What's happiness look like to me?
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be fair. A lot of us, and I truly mean this. I'm not trying to generalize. But I am going to generalize. Like a lot of, specifically, especially men, because I work with a lot of men and I ask them this question and it's like, they can't recall the last time they gave themselves the space to ask themselves that question and actually discover an answer. And sometimes it's not even discovering an answer. It's just realizing that, I want to do less of what I'm doing now and more of something else. I don't know what that else is, but I know that something has to change. But unless you get to that point and you actually reconcile that idea and come to a conclusion that, I do need to make some changes because I'm not happy with what I'm doing anymore. It's scary as all hell. Okay. I'll tell you right now, the day all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I remember having that conversation with my wife and I'm like, I don't think I'm meant to be here anymore. I don't think I want to keep working where I'm working. And now I was a junior partner in the company at this point. I was one of the co-founders of the company. Wow. I mean, I knew the industry really well. I was well known in the industry. And I was very comfortable. And all of a sudden thinking that I don't want to do this anymore and I think I got to make some changes. I had been there almost 17 years at that point. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? But I had this list of things I wanted to do. I wanted to write a book. I wanted to do a TED Talk. I wanted to be a full-time dad with my family and travel the world. And all of a sudden I realized all these things that I want, I'm not going to be able to achieve them if I stay on the path that I'm on right now. And so it's like, gosh, dude, how many of us get to that point in our lives where it's like, I didn't want to be the guy that all of a sudden I'm hitting 50 and I'm thinking back and my wife and I are talking, our kids are long gone off to university or done university by that point. And we're sitting around thinking, geez, you remember when we had that idea in our 30s to just quit our jobs and go traveling? I really wish we did that. And I don't want that to be my conversation with my wife when I'm 50. I want to be like, hey, we did it. We learned from it. Whew. Would we do it again? Well, yeah. Hell yeah, we would. Was it scary? Did we make lots of mistakes? Oh shit, yeah. A lot of them. But man,
that's the fun part. That's the fun part.
It was.
It's not scripted. It's not, you know, it's not written down in a process. You
Yes.
you figure it as you go. And
That's exactly right.
for
Exactly
me,
right.
my biggest life change was, so when I met my ex, she already had a baby, and
Mhm.
the baby was like 6 weeks old. I'm saying baby.
That's a real
But
baby.
yeah,
That's a real baby.
that's fresh. That's fresh out of the packet. And like for me, that was, I think I just left the military as well. So all of a sudden, I've gone from this world of routine and structure to, okay, what's happening? Like, okay, how do I do this? But
Oh,
it's that's what started my thought process of, so I'd love to have a big family. I'd love all this. And like me and my ex, we're not together anymore, but we have a son as well. He's now 4, and I tell you, for the last 4 years, especially with him on the scene, I've seen the development in myself. I've changed so much about my life because, to your point earlier, you know, I want him to have the most fun, like just everything possible. And each day I go, right, okay, what can I do today that's going to be fun for him? But this is where we get lost in that loop. Sometimes we focus so much on everyone else's happiness, and
yeah.
even as a child, you know, you focus in. My son's happy with a box, like an empty box, throw some stuff in there. If he can make a mess, he's happy. If he can make a noise, he's happy. But you lose that concept and you think, right, what can I do today that's going to be amazing and blah, blah, blah. You focus all your effort. Come to the evening, you're going, actually, what have I done today? I've not really accomplished anything for myself. And then you just keep putting it off and off and off. So now my whole lifestyle's changed. I don't care for all the fancy things anymore, or I'm not bothered about that.
Yeah.
I now walk with such a purpose and a confidence that I can go into a room and people do go, you know, it's that whole thing. It's the jealousy thing. They think, who's this idiot? Like he's walking around. Let's face it. I can't hide. I'm 6'3" and I'm ginger. I can't hide.
Ginger. My wife's a ginger, so she's
absolute hero.
Awesome.
Awesome. She's a hero.
Fans of redheads, I'll tell you.
It's that whole thing.
He was strawberry blonde last week.
Hey, look, the blonde. Look at the blonde coming through. Not grey,
sunshine,
blonde. So yeah, it's that thing now. So because I can go like wherever I go, I'm just happy. I'm happy that my son is healthy and happy, and my, you know, for better, my daughter. She's not my daughter, but I see her as that because I brought her up. So as long as they're happy, what else do you need? Like, what else do you need? A roof over your head, food on the table. That's it. That's it. Try and tell a kid, oh no, you need all this designer stuff. You need to be going to the fanciest places. They're going, no, I'd rather eat some chicken nuggets I found down the back of a sofa I hid last week than go for a fancy restaurant meal.
But it's that fancy stuff isn't for the kid. It's for it's to satisfy this social media influencer world and the likes, and you know, you go to this, you get this nice car and everyone's going to like me so much more because I've got a nice. It's just, we've talked about this a lot. It's just nonsense. Like you see a lot of these social media influencers, lives are portrayed by happiness, and a lot of them, they're just masking despair. A lot of them, a lot of the time, and they're just chasing likes, and it's just it's not a great place to be. Dai, just touching on a couple of the things that you mentioned there, actually, about the drinking buddies, like, and I think that I can relate to that a little bit because I don't have a problem with drink. I'm just going to say that now.
Well, you do. You're a bit of a lightweight.
Just ignore that. The 3 bottles. Just ignore the 3. Yeah, I'm also a compulsive liar. But I can often go. You know, there'll be times where I go, right, you know what? I'm not going to drink for a bit now. Yeah, I'm cool with that. But I'll have friends where they'll be like, "Are you going to come out tonight?" And then I'll go, "Yeah, but I'm going to drive because I'm not drinking." They'll go, "Oh, don't come out then," because it's like they want you to come out, and you know, if you're going to go out and drink and be one of the boys, you can't be a part of the group. And it's true what you say. You know, you need to get this. Once you take away those drinking friends, you have to try and find some people that you can talk to and relate to on on a different level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting.
True. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough, right? Like, because it often a lot of the normalcy in our lives is built around a certain community, you know, a certain community of friends that you're used to seeing and hanging out with, and but then, you know, the changes I wanted to make, I just realized that they weren't in a place to be able to support me best with what I wanted, right? Like, it wasn't a matter about them. It wasn't ever about them. It was about what I wanted for me and my family, but more importantly for me. And I just wish that, you know, some of those relationships could have been maintained. But at the end of the day, I started to find new groups, because we all need communities. We want to belong somewhere, right? Like we do want to have that feeling like I really belong here. It's like not like Facebook communities or Facebook groups, because we're also used to, well, I'm part of hundreds of groups. But how many of them do you feel like you belong in? You know, like you belong to that community. That's what I'm referring to. But when you find that, that kind of connection, I mean, those people can support you on your journey, while also us can support them, and it's all this mutual benefit of being there together to support one another, and that's something that I wanted, you know, but because I didn't have a lot of that, and so my wife and I started to create communities. You know, like, well, if we can't find one, why don't we just create some? Start inviting people that we feel are like-minded to come to those communities, and we'll create these new relationships founded on health first. You know, because if that's your foundation's health, and you're always doing things to reinforce that health. Then I'm not talking just about the physical. I'm talking about the mental, emotional, spiritual, like even financial health, like health in so many other ways. But when you focus on the health of you, your life, your family, your friends, and everything that matters, you start to realize that some of the decisions that we make, you start wondering, why did I want to do that to begin with? Well, what was the motivation? And that's what I found was happening for me as I was starting to go through this shift in how I just looked at things, how I interacted with things, like the kind of actions that I would do day to day. I started to realize that, you know, this change is good, but I don't think I can maintain this if I don't get around other people that want similar things. You know, and so I needed that. I needed it. So,
and it's finding that balance, isn't it? Like I talked about before, you know, having that job where I was just weighed down to this. I was doing it because the pay was good and that was it. You know, there was no satisfaction. There was no work-life balance. I worked away a lot doing that job. And then sort of I left that, started my own business, and that was great. But then I also needed to start looking after me. So then I started doing cycling as my form of exercise. And you touched on it a second ago, where you said people say, you know, you just need to exercise and you'll be fine mentally. And actually, but what I was finding was I was having the exhilaration of the ride was bringing me up here. And then as soon as I was stop, I was crashing back down. And I really started to feel some really big lows on the back of that. So then I had to try and find something that I wanted to do. And so I always wanted to write a book. Like I did. I always wanted to write a book. So I've just started writing a novel. And that's really helped, you know, that's really helped bring me back to I'm doing my exercise. My work's great, but my family's brilliant. And I've also got something that I'm doing for myself as well now. Which actually brings me on to your book, which is A Whole Life Manifesto.
Oh, the Whole Life Fitness Manifesto.
Whole Life Fitness Manifesto.
I know, it is a mouthful. I know. But it's a book I wrote just at the tail end. It actually didn't come out until a few months after I left my career and made that big change. So it was sort of in the works in the background, because it took about a year to get the book, you know, edited and all that stuff. It's right here. Woo! So I love that you're writing a book, because I think everyone's got a book in them. And it is such a wonderful feeling when you've come to that point and you're like, whoa, I did this. I created this, you know. It's like, and it's making a difference. It's impacting people. So I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to hear about it.
What was your motive? Was that the first book you ever wrote?
Yeah, I like yourself, you know, I know you mentioned blogging and even the fact that you guys are creating this type of content, you know, and these types of conversations and the blogs and just, you know, when you get into that sort of place of creating, and specifically creating content that serves, right? It's stuff that makes an impact or a difference for other people. There's something very cathartic about that. like for ourselves as the ones that are creating it. Because I find a lot of times it's that self-accountability that I get just by creating the content that I do. But I always love that. I always, I went to school for like English literature and philosophy, as well as some minors in creative writing. So I used to love that stuff. But then I got into business, I got into sales, I got into more entrepreneurship, but I wanted to maintain some sort of creative outlet. And so I started blogging 14 years ago. My website started, I just used it as something to put up articles, put up workouts, just talk about, well, as someone in the fitness space, people started to, they would know who I was and what I did. And, I'd be at an event or sometimes at a party or whatever. And as soon as people find out you're in the fitness space, everybody wants to talk about what they do or what they're not doing or what they should be doing. Right. And I would often get people asking me questions. And what I would realize is that I'd get asked the same question quite often. So I just became really lazy, and I was like, okay, that's a great question. And so I would work on a response to the individual, but then I would turn it into a blog article.
Yeah.
Because for now, ever moving forward, anytime I heard that question again, here you go, here's a link. it was sheer laziness of me just answering the same stuff over and over again. I was like, okay, I'm a systems and operations guy, so it was driving me nuts. Anytime I have to repeat something more than once, I'm like, okay, is there a better way to do this? Like, how do I cut down the time and the energy required for this? And so that's what I started to learn. But the neat thing was, as I was doing that and creating content, well, I didn't have any idea of how the online space worked, but I started to learn. And you learn things about search engine optimization. You learn about keywords and how to tag certain things. And it just started to pick up steam organically. People started to find my content and see value. They would send me a message. Oh, I started doing that exercise, that workout that you put on there, and really loved it. Or I'd have someone say, you know what, I never thought I'd run a mud run. Like I love mud runs, like the Spartans and the Tough Mudders, and I love that stuff, right? And I used to always encourage people to try one. Just try one. Like don't stress about it. And I would support people in getting to that place. And then people would write me like, man, never thought I could do it. And I did it. And I'm so happy. And it was awesome. And so, that was sort of what I was constantly doing, but I knew I wanted to write a book. So similarly to the feeling that you're having right now, like I just had this feeling like I really want to create something that that can help people. And my book teaches people how to manage 2% of their day. So that's 2%, it's 30 minutes of every 24 hours to put some focused effort into body, mind, and spirit. And it's 15 minutes of movement with purpose, 5 minutes of mindful meditation, 10 minutes of personal development. And you commit to doing it every day for 28 days. So it's a 4-week cycle. And I often have people saying, well, is that all I got to do? I'm like, well, it's the least you should be doing, But it's literally, it's just a real simple system to provide people with some great foundation when it comes to healthy living, and I often call it it's sort of a gateway program. And what I mean by that is a lot of people will come that are wanting to get started with something, but they just don't know what to do or how to do it. Sometimes they don't even know why they want to do it. And the book is set up in a way to help them with that, to support them. And I even give it away for free on my website. It's not a money thing at all. This is a purpose thing. This is me just trying to make an impact. And so it's been great. I've learned a ton through the process. And I feel really good about putting it out to the world, Do
you think you'll do more books in the future?
Yeah. Yes, actually, it's I've got some drafts in the works on a couple other pieces, and I'm not sure what it'll ultimately look like, but I am working on something, and we'll see. Yeah, I've got something called the 13th month, and because I often have people ask me, when they look back on sort of what I've done, people often say, well, how do you manage everything that you do? You got all these different things, these different businesses, you got your family, I have a lot of moving parts in my life, like we all do. And people often ask, well, how do you do all that? And for a long time, and it's still to today, I still get up at 5 a.m. every day, and for me, it's great. And I tend to sleep anywhere from 6 to 7 hours on average. But what I used to do was, with that extra sleep, or I should say those extra hours that I often wasn't using with sleep, when you extrapolate out, you know, like if I work on 6 to 7 hours, that extra hour to 2 hours can translate to 2 to 4 weeks of productivity in a year.
Yeah.
Right. And I used to tell people that was how I do what I do. You know, a lot of the things that I've built outside of life, like alongside of everything else that I do, was done with that focused time.
Yeah.
And we all have access to that.
It's just having the discipline, isn't it? It's having the discipline in yourself.
It is
to do that. Like Marco, you said at the start, set your alarm. Do you smack it and go, nah, I'm having another 10 minutes, or do you go, right, I'm up, everyone's still asleep, I can focus on this before the house wakes up? Yeah.
And I needed that. Because you know, my kids were, you know, guys know what it's like. Your dad's too. You know, like it's a lot of things to juggle. And I often talk about the struggle with the juggle, you know, that is life. And it's very real. We're all dealing with it. But it's just learning how to manage oneself, how to block or, you know, I hear people always talk about time management. I'm like, nah, forget about time management. Think about commitment management.
Yeah.
You know, manage your commitments, block your time. And like, I'm really big on that. I always block in certain things every week, you know, and I got focused, like, you know, family time. I've got focused workout time. I've got focused productivity time as a, you know, with reading and writing. Like if you don't, like, I'm like a stickler that way. If I don't block it into my calendar, I give myself an ability to have an out, to not do it. Yeah. You know, because often what we pay attention to is what we take or make time for. And I find that I have to often do that. I have to take it or make it. Otherwise, if I'm just waiting around for it to happen, it doesn't usually happen. Because I'm just like everybody else. I'd rather sit down and watch the TV, put on Netflix. Like, come on, man. I want to do that too.
Yeah.
But, you know, so it's like, how important is some of the things that we want in our life, and learning how to create the routine to go after those things.
Yeah.
Remove distractions and just go for it.
Yeah. Do you know that's where I was a couple of weeks ago, where when we were in the full lockdown. I found myself, you know, I started the blog, I started the podcast, I've got I started the book, I'm running a business, I'm being a dad, and then I'm trying to get fit. And I was like, okay, so I'm doing all this now. I'm just about how do I live outside of lockdown when the social aspect of your life comes back into play and you can leave the house? How do I manage all this time? And so that's been not a battle, but a challenge to because I don't want to drop any of what I'm doing. So it's how do I manage, like say, manage the time effectively to put in that. Maybe I need to get up a little bit earlier. I think that's it. Obviously, I've got a 2-year-old, so I'm up at 6:30 every day. But maybe I should get up at 5. Do you know what? I'm going to try it.
Awesome.
I'm going to do it. 5 o'clock.
If you want to get up at 5, I can send my son. Because I don't need to set an alarm when I've got him. Guaranteed 5 a.m. He's basically in my room. And normally what I get is it breakfast time yet? And I'll look at the phone.
Oh, it's so good.
It's not yet, buddy. Not yet.
So I'm conscious we've run over a little bit. Are you okay for time? Do you need to shoot off anytime soon?
I gotta, you know what? I actually have another 10 minutes. I do feel a bit remiss. Normally I wouldn't have stuff blocked, but I actually do have a commitment I have to get to. So it's all good though.
Yeah, no, but we have run over a little bit, so apologies about that. But I just wanted to ask just a couple of questions, really. So
sure.
with people that maybe where you were at 14, but obviously has grown up. So what advice would you give to somebody who's at that point where they're like, I need to make a change? Like, how would you give advice to get somebody started on that?
Well, if you're feeling like you need to make a change, I invite you to start thinking about, what do you have to do to get to the place where you want to make a change? And I bring that up because I find myself a lot of times thinking, I really need to do this, I ought to do this. But it's not until I get to a place where I'm like, I want to do this, you know, and you know, I'll sort of paraphrase Nietzsche, but you know, like with the strong enough why, we can endure anyhow. And it's sort of that connecting. The easiest way to put this is when you connect your emotional desire for something with the actual action, right? Like it's one thing to think about it. And we're really good at just getting really heady, like getting in our own heads and thinking things through and itemizing our lists and setting the plan. Cause I'm usually that kind of guy where I'm like, I need the plan. I can't do it until I've done the plan, and then I'll just put off making the plan. And sometimes it's just a matter of just doing one thing, one action that's going to start to get you on that journey of progression, not of perfection, right? So take note of this. You want a journey of progression, not one of perfection. Because it's really easy to get stuck and hung up in like, oh, I could have done that better, so I won't do it again until I do it just the right way, right? Or, oh, I need to edit that one little thing, or, like we're so good at pointing fingers to things that aren't going how we envision it, and then we use that as a reason to not continue or to slow our progress. Yeah. So it's taking away all that, like just giving yourself the permission to just do something. And not be so concerned about the results that creates by doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't be so tied that you're only doing this because of the result that you feel it should be providing you. It's like, entrepreneurs that just get started in a new business. It's like, well, I thought I'd replace my income in the first week. And I'm like, good. I haven't had that luxury of that experience in my own career. But you know what I mean? It's like you want to make a change to your health, and moving your body is one of the factors that's very important for just general well-being. Yeah. But going to the gym once, I haven't met anybody that got all the results in one session, But that one session, that very first session, it's huge. It's where everything begins. It's the first step, as they say, on that 1,000,000-mile journey that is our life, right? But you got to take that first action. And if you're finding it really hard to take the first action, it's probably because you don't have clarity nor confidence. Mm-hmm. So take a step back. If you're unable to get started, this is where starting to ask yourself some questions so you can get clear. Questions are good. You ask the right questions, it forces us to go into that mode of either discovery or creation. And we want to find the answer because we get a nice dopamine hit when we get there, right? Like it's that we all want the dopamine. We want the adrenaline. We want the dopamine. It's a very, very good motivating chemicals that we can tap into pretty much whenever we want. And so once you've got that clarity, that automatically builds confidence. Once you have confidence, it's pretty easy to take an action. But here's the thing, the rub. You got to keep making the action, okay? Yeah. It's not enough to do it once and just, oh, well, it didn't really work. Oh, well.
I read a stat that said, I can't remember where I read this recently, but 65% of new gym memberships last the first month. And then they never go back.
It's just like New Year's resolutions, right? Like it's a similar statistic. Over half of people that form resolutions by the third week of January have already given up.
Yeah.
Close to 80% of that within the first 60 days. Like, well, why do we keep making this so hard on ourselves? Because we're conditioned to fail, right? We're used to failure. It's almost like, oh, well, that didn't work. Well, that's okay. I didn't really think it would anyways, right? Like we're so dismissive and quick to just say, oh, well, it didn't work. Oh, well. But you know what? That sucks. Okay. It does not. We're discounting ourselves before we've really given it a chance, given ourselves a chance. And
I was once told, and it will always stay with me throughout my military life. I was told by one guy that repetition builds routine. Now, when you think of it like that, it's true. And no matter what you do in life, it's repetition that builds the routine. So getting up at 5 a.m., if you do it once or twice, you ain't going to last. But if that becomes repetition and you do it, okay, Monday to Friday, I'm going to get up at 5. And then weekends, you flex it. But it's that repetition. It becomes routine to you. Same with workouts, new businesses, new routines, new everything. The more you do it, the more you go at it. And if you fail, you fail. But the biggest thing is, what do you learn from that fail? And then you go, okay, I'm going to go at it again because of the repetition and the routine. So try something. So for me, it's like the gym. When I go to the gym, I go, right, this month, I want to work on this muscle part. That's it. You go into the gym, you go hell for leather. By 3 weeks, you go, hang on, I look smaller. What's going on? Like, that's not right. So you failed somewhere. So then you redress it. You think, okay, what am I doing wrong? For me, I used to be very like knuckleheaded. I go, nah, it's not me. It's the machines aren't working. The weights aren't right. Like the food content's not great.
Yeah.
But now I ask questions, and I ask a lot of questions. To your point, you ask the right questions, and all of a sudden you start adjusting that routine. Your new repetition kicks in, and then 3 weeks down the line, 4 weeks down the line, you see the change, you see the difference. So no matter what you do, I'll always remember repetition builds routine, and that's right. That's it. In fact, I might write a book now. Repetition builds routine.
I think it would be great. Honestly, it's so true though. Like, but a lot of times we quit before we've even given it a chance. To start to create. And it does. Like when you start doing your research, like part of my book, I talk about habit formation because I often get asked. People ask me, well, how long is it going to take for this just to become normal for me? And I'm like, well. Yeah, there's no fixed answer. Some people, we see that term 21 days or 3 weeks thrown around a lot. There's also people that say 5 weeks. And, when you look into the actual literature, some of the documentation and some of the studies, it's closer to like 120 days. So it's like, well, who's right? Well, here's the right answer: is we're all different. There's no fixed number. It doesn't mean like if you're doing it to create a habit, just keep doing it. And just one day, like for me, it was 20 months as that morbidly obese kid where all of a sudden it's where I stopped thinking about things. I just started to do things. Do you know what I mean? Like there was no more thoughts. It was just being. I was just part of my lifestyle. I get up, I'd, have some water. I'd go for a cycle or go to the gym, like I did. It just became really I wasn't thinking about it. I was just doing. And that's where it really becomes a lifestyle, and there's no number. I can't give people a number and say, oh, if you do it for this long, everything will be changed. Well, it's like, don't worry about that. This is why we keep coming back to the journey part, right? Enjoy the journey for the sake of the journey. Don't worry about it because of the destination.
We talk about this with being a dad, and everyone. I always say, just ignore the outside pressures of people saying to you, "Well, do this because we did that," or your kids, my kid did it like this. Like, ignore that because they might be wanting to give you some good advice, but every kid is so uniquely different. So what works for you won't work for me. And, it's just about, like you just said, enjoy the ride and just, live through it and make sure they're alive at the end.
What? The thing about, first lockdown we had over here.
Yeah.
It was all new. Mm-hmm. But that time, I absolutely adored that time because I got to see my little boy's personality. I got to see, because normally it would be, you get up, you do the whole breakfast routine, you drop them off at school, you go to work, you pick them up, bedtime, done. Yeah. You don't get to see them interacting throughout the day. So I actually got to see Dexter and Anya, his sister, interact with each other. The conversations they were having, I was sitting there sometimes just staring at them like, what are you two talking about? Like, this is incredible. Like, what's going through your mind? And you start to see them for them. And like Michael said, everyone's different. So we speak about it. You can be told a million times, no, do it this way. It works. Trust me, do it this way. Like, if I try and change anything for my boy, trust me, I'm the first to go, yeah, that didn't work. Work.
It's man.
You just let them develop.
Seriously,
let them develop and enjoy it.
That's right. And you know what? If you're there just to give them love, and help them with choosing the right choices. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just giving them choice so they can make decisions, so they feel like they're making the decision on what direction they're headed every day. And I always found that worked really well. It's like, well, you can either have this or this for breakfast. Which one do you want?
I don't do that. I ask him. But when it's the wrong one, I normally, raise the eye. And he knows. So I don't have to say anything, but he's empowered enough to go, yeah, I won't have cake for breakfast. I won't. Yeah. I love porridge. And then I'm like, oh, amazing. Well done. That's such a good.
Di, wrapping up now, mate. Just
Sure.
wanted to say, actually, well, I listened to one of your talks. You were talking about, I think you were saying you have 26,000 days on Earth, and I really like that, because I was thinking, oh, that's a long time, and then I realized, like, oh, I only got 13,000 left. Like, that's half of it's gone. Maybe I need to start really put it into context what I want to do and trying to do something with that. But no, I really like that. I really like that talk that you gave on the
Thank you.
26,000 days that you have alive. And when you put it like that, I think you said put it on a piece of paper, didn't you? And you were like, imagine that's a countdown on the wall.
Yeah.
And
that's exactly it. Like, if we were born and the day we came home from the hospital with our parents, and they put a clock on the wall, and that clock continuously would count down, we would look at time very differently. We would look at our day-to-day very differently. But that, in essence, is what starts from the day we're born, right? Like, we're not sure of when that expiration is. When does our next journey begin versus this life? But it's remarkable. We don't often think about it that way. And there's lots of philosophers, lots of psychologists that speak to this, how we like to avoid anything that around death. You don't want to think about it. Like, I'll tell you, I struggle with that conversation a lot, and it wasn't until I experienced my father's passing a number of years ago that I really started to reconcile some of my emotions and fears with death. And it just started to shift things for me, because when you hit 40, well, actually, I'm going to be 45 this coming fall. You look at the average life expectancy for a human male, right? It's about 79 years. That means I'm in my last half, if we go with just statistics. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, every day it looks like that clock is not counting up anymore. It's counting down. And so I start to value my decisions, value who I spend time with, who gets my attention, who gets my energy, who do I allow into my life. And it's so strange, but these filters have appeared now because I just value time and I value my energy so much more differently. Do you know? Like, it's just that asset, it just keeps getting less and less and less. So the value to me keeps going up and up and up. Yeah. And so I start to see myself making certain decisions now based on that. And you know what? It's been great. Like, there's nothing negative about this, but I think the only negative for myself is I wish I understood this, or I appreciated it a little bit more 10 years ago. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, I really do. But that's that freaking cliche that we hear now, right? It's like, oh, if I only knew, 20 years ago what I know now, but whatever. All I can say is, well, from now moving forward, this is my new way of looking at things, right? And so I appreciate that you resonated with that. It's not an easy one to reconcile, for sure, but it's going to happen. I mean, I hate to say it's like that only guarantee that we all got is that we're leaving here at some point, so, knock on wood, it's a long time out, but you just never know, right? You just don't know. No. Well, listen, Dai, really appreciate you coming on. It's been great chatting to you, mate. Yeah, like I said, we and Adi, we were super excited to get you on, and then it's been a great conversation. So really appreciate you coming on and giving us an hour and a half of your time. Thank you. No, I absolutely love it, guys. I love what you're doing. I hope we can connect again sometime. I'm looking forward to sharing out your podcast to some of my communities, but also I'll send you guys some details on Mentorship Mondays in case it ever works. You want to connect with some other UK dads. They meet on Zoom once a week, right? Just to sort of talk about everything that we've been talking about today. So it's cool. That's really useful, because actually this has been going for like 3 months, and the Facebook page is now up to nearly 2,000 people. Amazing. And I was like, I know we're having these conversations, but I'd like to do something more with that. Because I'm talking to a lot of people that have tried to commit suicide, and they're going through really horrible times, and it's like, it's great me having these conversations with them, but where can I direct these people to actually go and get some help? And so that sort of stuff would be great. So any information you can send me on that'd be amazing. Happy to do so. And listen, I know we're all going to connect again soon. You guys are awesome. Thank you for creating this space, but more importantly, just the content to support a lot of us out there, especially us men, us dads, right? So we are very quick to put our own needs on the back burner, right? We push it off to focus on everybody else, but we have to reverse that. We got to look after ourselves, you know, for us to be the best versions of ourselves, best fathers, the better husbands, the better dads, the better friends, right? We got to look after us first. And it's, I know it's a weird thing to say, to even reconcile, but man, you guys are leading the way. You're showing what's possible. So thank you. And I'm honored, absolutely honored to have been here today. Thank you. Really
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.